folks, hello, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You're very welcome. Thanks very much indeed for joining us today. Delighted to welcome you along to the latest in our series of live webinars, specifically aimed at helping someone and people like you get hired by technology, software and SaaS organizations. My name's Rob Magee. I'm the CEO at Ingenio. We are an e-learning business specifically designed to help people get hired by, as I said already, technology, software and SaaS organizations. And we do that, and we come from that space because of a long, successful track record that we have in the recruitment space. I'm also the CEO and co-founder at Ingenio Recruitment. Delighted to be welcoming you to our topic today. We are running a series over the course of June, which is helping you with tips for interviews that really no one is going to help you with, or that you can go and research. And some of the things that we're talking about specifically, and what we're going to be talking about today, is all around making a good impression in an interview, in a job interview. Last week, we had a really interesting, very informative and very engaged session talking about, maybe what your CV doesn't say. So getting you to articulate the things that weren't on your CV that an interviewer is definitely going to ask you a question around. Today is all around making that good impression in the job interview, and it's so unbelievably important. And I'll be able to give you some context on why that is the case. And then you'll see some of the other topics that we're going to be talking about over the rest of the course of June. So look, let's dive in. By the way, one of the things that works amazing on these sessions is the community that you, by being here today, are basically part of. So look, if you've got questions around what I'm going to talk about today, or indeed anything around the whole job process, right? Whether that's CV, LinkedIn profile, application process, maybe context design, and obviously interview, post-interview. If you've got any questions at all, shoot them in the Q&A, and I will take them live at the very end. So I want to talk today about 3 things that will really help you make massive impact at interview stage. Some of it is right at the beginning, some of it is at the end, and obviously some of it is right bang smack in the middle of the interview. The first thing I want to talk about is the creating that really warm, friendly impact within the first 30 seconds. And the reason that is so important, and again, I was reminded of this myself yesterday. I sat in on a number of interviews that we are conducting for Ingenio itself. And it is amazing how an interviewer just knows within that first 30 seconds whether they're actually going to progress with someone or not. And really what I want to try and get you thinking about is, what do the first 30 seconds of your Zoom interview or your phone interview, or hopefully very soon your face-to-face interview, what do those 30 seconds look and feel like for the interviewer? Not for you, but what do they look and feel like for the interviewer? It's so incredibly important that you create a bond, and it might be an unseen or indeed unspoken bond, but it's really important that you make a serious connection with that individual in the first 30 seconds. I had some great advice earlier on today when I was kind of prepping for this session. Clearly in that introduction piece, you can prepare for that, right? But the great bit of advice I had earlier on was making sure that you've read the newspaper the morning of your interview, so that you are at a headline that you are aware as to exactly what is going on in the world, whether that's, you know, the city, whether that's the country, or indeed whether that's from a global perspective, so that you are aware of exactly what's going on, and that you can be, you know, at a very, very headline, you can be relevant and you can be topical. And clearly, in the current climate, I would definitely try and get you to steer away from anything to do with COVID, because people have simply had enough. But that's the first thing that I would get you to really kind of tune into. So read the newspaper. And look, if that maybe freaks you out a little, if that's a little bit maybe too kind of too organized, or maybe kind of too detailed, you know, look, certainly where I am today, you know, absolutely beautiful weather, and something like that might be relevant. You know, we've just come off the back of in Ireland, and indeed the UK, a couple of bank holidays. So that's kind of relevant. We've maybe there's some holidays that you're perhaps looking forward to. So, or perhaps there's a sporting event, or some kind of arts or entertainment event upcoming that's on your mind. So really what I want to try and get you to do is really try and make that connection very, very quickly. And how you make connections is clearly is visually, from a smile perspective. And if you're on the phone, people can tell, or they can hear whether you're smiling or not. I know you're going to be nervous, you're in interview mode, but that's really, really important for you to kind of tune into. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would be saying to you is, obviously, if you're on camera, you need to be staring down the camera, right? As opposed to looking up or looking down, or maybe even indeed looking at your notes. That's very, very, very important. And look, it's about asking a question. So clearly engaging in a conversation very, very quickly, so that you can create that friendly, warm impact that I'm kind of talking about. Okay, so that's the first thing. It's hard to prepare for that, you know, in the sense of, like, it's hard to prepare, because clearly what you don't know the type of individual that effectively, you know, is going to interview you until you go and meet them. But like, what I would be trying to do is maybe role play that out with a friend or a family member, or if you can't do that, you know, role play out what you're going to go and say, and the questions that you're going to go and ask, and do it in front of your camera. Really, really important. Okay. The second thing is creating impact after the interview. And it is astonishing, absolutely astonishing to us as recruiters, how few people follow up after an interview saying, thanks a million for your time. I really appreciate, you know, you taking the time to interview me. I found it very interesting, very useful, very informative, really exciting. I'm really up for this. I'm very passionate, learned even more, whatever the case may be, right? But it's really, really important that you follow up an interview, regardless of whether you're interested or not, with a thank you, with a really polite, straightforward thank you email. It will go such a long way to, again, making sure that you stand out versus loads of other people who just simply won't do this. Okay. Number one, it's polite. It's basic fundamental manners. Number two, what it allows you to do is it allows you to touch off the person that you have interviewed with a second time after the interview. So effectively what you're doing is you are creating an additional bond, an additional connection, and another touch point that means that you are less forgettable to them after the event. Okay. My advice in terms of following up on an email is try and do it on that same business day. It doesn't need to be immediately after the interview. And one thing that I would always try and get you to think about is, sorry, when I say one business day, i.e. within 24 hours of your interview. Okay. So if you're interviewing at, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you can follow up obviously that evening, or indeed you can follow up the next morning. What I will say to you is, think about when your interviewer gets the vast majority of, or when they're going to get an email that they will actually have time to read. And clearly that is typically outside of the normal kind of 9 to 5, because if they're like me, or indeed like you guys, they're going to be very, very busy with their day. So really what I would be trying to encourage you to go and do is maybe drop an email into them, you know, in the evening time, not too late, clearly, but in the evening time, sometime between maybe 6 and 9 p.m. Or indeed the following morning, sometime between kind of maybe 7 and, you know, and 8:30, 9 o'clock, so that they're getting your email when they're less busy, if that makes sense. So you're less likely to be forgotten about. But the thank you email is so unbelievably important. Now, the last thing that, again, you're probably never going to hear anyone really talk about is the power and the impact of positive, curious questions in an interview. This is a topic in Ingenio Learning, in our course, that I spend a huge amount of time talking about specifically. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to touch on this in a little bit of detail, but like, if you want more detail, if you want more information on this in terms of how it works and what to say and how you say it and everything else like that, look, at this stuff is all in our course. Positive, curious questions. So this would be you asking the interviewer a question in Q&A piece, okay, in the section of the interview where questions come up. And what I am looking for you to go and do here is ask a question where the interviewer has to kind of sit back, hopefully look up and smile, right? And I'll give you an example of one of those questions now in a second, right? But the reason the positive, curious questions are so important for you to ask in an interview is that it creates an immediate positive psychology connection between you and the interviewer. It connects you with a positive experience that individual has basically had, and what they're effectively psychologically thinking about you is, God, this girl or this guy, you know, they're really interested in positive outcomes. And straight away you're kind of tuned into that. So that's really, really important for you to go and do. Again, if you've taken our course, or indeed you've not yet taken our course, there are 4 key critical sections that we talk about, that we teach our students and that we teach our candidates around how to structure an interview. And Q&A is section 3, and positive, curious questions are absolutely fundamental. They are the foundation to that Q&A section that you need to go and nail for your interview. So let's give you an example of that positive, curious question, okay? And look, here is a template question for you guys to take down and use and try and practice. The key thing with this question is that you have to be really, really comfortable asking the question, okay? And you have to say it. You have to say it so it trips off the tongue, firstly, and you have to say it so that when you're asking the question, someone really genuinely believes what it is that you're asking about, okay? So this question here, can you tell me about the one thing that you've done at your company that you are most proud of? Okay, can you tell me about the one thing that you've done at your company that you are most proud of? And the typical reaction that a CEO or a COO or indeed any hiring manager is going to do in that situation, like, the first thing is that's not a typical interview question that they will used to be hearing, okay? What they'll typically do is they'll sit back and say, right, okay, God, that's an interesting question. What's the thing that I'm most proud of? And straight away, you can see even my reaction here. Straight away, they're now going through the memory bank and they're trying to evoke all of the positive, really positive kind of proud things that they've done. And you know, then they say, okay, well, yeah, look, that's a really interesting one. Actually, we're working on, you know, or we've just landed a project in the last 6 weeks for a very large client. And we've been working on this for the last 2 years. It was a highly competitive sales process, and I'm the guy who basically led the sales team that effectively landed this big client. These guys are now the biggest client in our business, and and look, it's down to me. So you think about that, right? Even as I'm talking about that, like I'm smiling, okay? And straight away then, you know, you can get into a conversation, say, all right, wow, okay, who's the client, you know, and who are you competing against? And why did the client pick you? Straight away, you have built yourself an opportunity to be able to kind of explore that really positive or proud experience that the interviewer has. It's incredibly powerful, folks. Absolutely incredibly powerful. And guaranteed, if you can get a question like that out in an interview, it really explodes out the potential for real positive engagement, real positive connection, and some super psychology, some really super positive psychology between you and the person who's interviewing you. So look, I hope that helps, right? That is really, really important for you to kind of tune into, right? So just to recap, right? What are those three things? Real friendly impact in the first 30 seconds. Thank you email after the event, and positive, curious questions. Speaking about questions, I am going to go and take your questions right now. But before I do that, and while I'm getting some of those questions to come in, let me just really quickly tell you about our course, right? So 90% of our students who take the Ingenio Learning course get hired by tech firms in 90 days. Here's what some of our students who come from completely different backgrounds, experiences, age profiles, here's what they are saying about having taken our course, done the course, and then gone on to go and get hired. And look, some people do it because they're really struggling with their CV. Some people are doing it because they're really struggling with confidence. Some people do it because they're moving from industries like hospitality, retail, manufacturing, and they want to go and get hired by tech and software organizations. So that's really important. These are the types of organizations that our students get hired by. Some of the most amazing tech and software businesses out there, some of whom you've probably never heard of today, and everything in between. Really, really important. Our gift to you tuned in today live, we've a one-time discount off our set standard course price. So that's 70% off. And I really want to try and get you thinking about, what does €30 mean to you in relation to that dream role? Think about the vision, the objectives, where you want to go, and maybe some of the blocks, the stumbling blocks that maybe you are having right now. I think we'll be able to get you through that stuff. And lastly, we've got a one-to-one coaching session. If you've got an interview upcoming, you can get time directly with me, or indeed some of the team, where we go and help you with confidence, with structure, with content, format, verbalizing, whatever the case may be.